You were the firstborn child of Mona and Sidney Samuelson, and they named you Orion. Very unusual name. Where did they come up with it?
I asked that quite a few times. I had a grandfather named Carl and another grandfather named Ole, the initials C.O., and so they wanted to be able to incorporate those initials into my name, and they did that by calling me Orion Clifford.
Agriculture ran in the Samuelson blood. Orion was raised by a farmer who was also raised by a farmer, and it was instilled in him at a very young age that hard work is a great teacher for any job.
I've seen quite a few images of your father, and in some of the pictures he's wearing overalls, and in some he's dressed up. He's looking dapper in a suit. How often would he put on a suit?
To go to church on Sunday, and maybe a few other times go to family weddings and that sort of thing, but otherwise, yeah, it was overalls. And I remember when I got my first pair of overalls or I should say of half pants, as we called them. And that was a big deal as we were growing up, because that was a sign that we were growing up because of the way we dressed.
Before entering high school, his future looked bright. He was a tall student with high hopes of joining the basketball team, and one day taking over the family business. But just ahead of his freshman year, Orion ran into some serious trouble with his leg.
What was happening that led you to realize something's going on here? I need to go to the doctor and see what's happening.
Well, my parents decided I needed to go to the doctor because I was not walking as well as I should. I didn't have good balance, and I needed some support to get my balance back. And I can still remember Dr. Jones walking out of his office after the examination, and he said, "Orion, no way to tell you this, but you're not going to walk for 2 years." It's the only time in my life that I saw my dad cry, because I'm sure he was looking forward to passing the farm on to me when I reached the age where that would happen. But suddenly I wasn't going to walk for 2 years, certainly wasn't going to play basketball, and so I spent a lot of time in bed, flat on my back, and then I graduated to a wheelchair, and then I graduated to crutches.
In just his third year on the job, Orion was fatedly given the critical responsibility of delivering a life-changing live report to one of the nation's largest audiences, a news bulletin that stopped the whole world in its tracks.
November 22nd, 1963, it came over the wire that President Kennedy was shot. Can you take us back to that moment?
Yeah, it's a day I've never forgotten, because every year on November 22nd, a lot of radio stations use that moment in history. And I can still remember the name Gene Doretti, who was a newsman, ran into the studio and laid a piece of yellow paper down in front of me on the desk. And I glance over at it and I see President Kennedy has been shot in Dallas.
Here is a bulletin from WGN News just handed me. President Kennedy has been shot and seriously wounded. Kennedy was shot at just as his motorcade left downtown Dallas. A photographer on the scene said he saw blood on the president's head. I repeat, this bulletin from WGN News. WGN News will keep you posted on the latest developments as quickly as they are received. In the meantime, we continue with our Country Fair show. We'll have bulletins up to the minute as we receive them from the newsroom.
We don't have cell phones, we don't have computers, we don't have anything but that teletype in the newsroom. And so now what do? I have just made the biggest announcement that I'll probably ever make, but it just says President Kennedy has been shot. So we had a TV set in the studio, and it was on to Walter Cronkite on CBS. And so I went back to reading the weather forecast until I could get more information. And meanwhile, watching Walter Cronkite, he made the announcement that President Kennedy has died. So I do that bulletin. But now what do? It's noon time. There's not another announcer in the room or at the station. They're out to lunch. And so what do? I kept reading the weather forecast.
What do you think is the most important job that the Ag Secretary does? What do you think that it is when someone steps into that position? What do they need to keep at the front of their minds?
Number one, the fact that they now represent an industry that is a basic industry. We couldn't get along without the Department of Agriculture or the Secretary of Agriculture. But to me, and I'm biased because I'm so in favor of farmers and what they do, I think the most important job they do is to let everybody in the world knows what agriculture can do for them, thanks to the American farmer.
And his advice to anyone looking to get involved in the ag industry? The sky's the limit.
I could never have dreamed milking cows in Wisconsin at that dairy barn that I would end up doing what I've been able to do. So don't be afraid to dream it. Don't be afraid if people laugh at you for saying what you said because they can't do it. But be adventuresome and take a look at the opportunities that come your way.